Fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
The land down under has never been easier to reach. United Airlines has more flights between the U.S. and Australia than any other U.S. airline, so you can fly nonstop to destinations like Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. Explore dazzling cities, savor the very best of Aussie cuisine, and get up close and personal with the wildlife. Who doesn't want to hold a koala? Go to united.com/Australia to book your adventure.
Join Justin Townsend and the Harvesting Nature crew as they explore the world of cooking wild fish and game while sharing recipes, tips, tricks, and lessons learned from their pursuit of wild food. We sure hope you ate before the show, 'cause you're gonna leave hungry. This is the Wild Fish and Game Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Harvesting Nature's Wild Fish and Game Podcast. You got your host here, Justin Townsend. I am joined today by a very special guest who I will introduce here momentarily. And then I also have my brother from another mother in the Great White North, Adam.
Hey folks.
And today, excited, we've got a good topic. I say I'm always excited. I'm always excited about the topic. If I ever say I'm not excited, we probably shouldn't have the guest on, because then it's not going to be a great conversation. But excited to talk today on a topic. We're going to kind of stick in the lane as we have been discussing some of the fish, not necessarily fishing, because as you know, we don't dive too much into the world of like, here's how you catch fish. It's more like what you do with it after. And so we're going to talk about dry aging fish, and you'll understand how that correlates here very quickly once I introduce our guest. But we'll kind of do some updates here. So real brief, got out with the family this weekend. We're exploring some of the local parks and stuff in our new area here. Lots and lots of mushrooms. And then was talking with Adam last night, and he's like, you need to be on the lookout for, what was it? Lobster mushrooms, chicken in the woods, hen in the woods, hedgehogs. All these varieties of mushrooms that I don't know that I've seen as much coming from the Rocky Mountains. So start to identify that and figure those out with my kids, who seem more interested in it than I am, because I hear, oh, look, there's a mushroom, Dad, like every 5 minutes. And then, of course, they want to know what it is, and I'm like, I have no idea. Like, let's try to figure it out, which is also great. So aside from that, I think we're going to get out and do some fishing this weekend, hopefully on the Chesapeake. We'll figure that out as the week comes to an end, and hopefully get out. I don't know, Adam, what do you got?
Well, on the topic of mushrooms, I was out today. I collected probably like 5 pounds of lobster mushrooms. Catching the tail end of the chanterelles, I got some oyster mushrooms and some indigo milk caps, which are kind of cool. They're like this weird blue mushroom, and when you cut them, they bleed bright indigo blue. They look very inedible, but they are in fact edible.
So it sounds intimidating. I don't know.
Yeah, they're pretty intimidating, but they're pretty good. There's one dish that is kind of cool. When you stir fry them with eggs, it turns the eggs green. So you can have like green eggs and ham, but kind of like a mushroom scramble. And it's better than it sounds. And then I've also been finding some fruit. There's some apples that starting to be ready now, and I got a big bag of plums from someone's tree that was hanging over a fence, which I always keep my eyes open for. So yeah, so I got a big table full of wild food right now, which is great.
That's awesome. I just recently I was in one of these neighborhood Facebook groups here, and they were talking about, somebody was talking about figs and was asking other people if they had figs, and somebody posted about the like Falling Fruit, that app. And I was like, oh yeah, I have that on my phone, and I pulled it up, and there's, I guess, the DC Urban Tree Authority post when they plant on there. So if they put a tree and they mark it, geotag it and mark it. So there's there's some ginkgo trees nearby. There's some serviceberry trees. So all these ones, I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to just go walk around the neighborhood and pay more attention and hopefully get some nice neighborhood forageables. I guess we'll have to check the surrounding area for dog remnants, but it should be a cool way to get some food. And then let's see, one quick update before we go into it. So we've got our wild pig camp coming up in December. We're looking at launching a spring camp again for 2025 here in the next probably month, so keep an eye out for that. We're planning to have a special guest at that camp as well. I'm not going to release now who it is, but just know it's going to be more special than me and Adam, so it'll be really special. And then we still have a few seats open for our December camp if you want to come down with us down to Texas and learn how to hunt, shoot, hunt, butcher, process, and cook wild pigs down there with us over kind of a weekend. So everybody out there, let us know. But outside of that, I will introduce our guest here. I am going to borrow an introduction from one of the websites I found you referenced on as an ambassador, because I did not have time to write my own. So born in Taiwan, Liwei grew up in Queens, New York, and refers to himself as a self-taught fishmonger. His family had a boat out in Connecticut, and he grew up fishing. And from a very young age, his father taught him how to gut and clean fish, which left a lasting impression on him. Liwei believes that there's nothing better than catching a fish yourself and sharing it together at the table with his friends and family, especially given how integral fish is to Chinese culture. He honed his cooking skills while working as a private chef and running a boba truck for 6 years. And then later on went to launch The Joint on Ventura Boulevard, and now he's very hands-on with everything he does there, from the fish on to... You designed the whole place yourself, is what I was reading as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is awesome. So, Liwei Liao, welcome to the Wild Fishing Game Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Justin, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. Aside from my very borrowed introduction, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, that boat in Connecticut is still there. I was on it just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
So, my folks still live out there. My dad, he still fishes, every other day as weather will permit. It's a quick 35-minute ride over the Throgs Neck Bridge over to Stanford, and he still fishes those same waters he has for the last 35, 40 years. So nothing has changed, same slip. We went through a couple of different boats, but the boat, the Mako he has now is the same one. We were just talking about it. It was I think 25 years old.
Oh, wow.
So third motor in. But that hull is bulletproof, Yeah. But that's where I grew up, fishing, hunting as well. I fished and hunted that whole northeastern, those states up there, New York, upstate, all the way through Maine. That was my childhood, early. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you had a hunting pass as well, or was active in it. So that's great.
Oh yeah. I don't have as much time as I used to, or as would like for hunting, but yeah, that's what I grew up doing, fishing, hunting, and then even now, out here in California, a lot of bird hunting, a lot of upland bird. Not so much big game out here for me, but I would go back east.
Sweet.
Yeah.
We'll have to link up next time you come out this way. We'll do some hunting or fishing.
Oh yeah. Or fishing.
Yeah.
One or the
other. So how did you make your way out west and kind of get into the restaurant world?
Well, I came out to LA, to California for school, in 2000, and I kind of just stayed because the weather was so much nicer. It was simple. You didn't really need to, persuade me otherwise. I mean, the weather was, yeah, it's hot in the summertime, but it's hot in New York as well. Hot and humid. It just came from that shit. It's just way, it's miserable. You feel it in DC. That last thunderstorm coming up from Florida. Oh, that was miserable.
It was bad. It was bad.
So so I just stayed out here. Try to make it myself after school. Worked in tech for a little bit, but just got drawn back to just kind of got drawn back to my passion. And I kind of noticed, I definitely fished more than I hunted, and every fish market I would go into here in LA, I would just like feel like I'm in a really disgusting, stank, low quality, no matter how high end. I mean, even the Santa Monica seafoods or like the boutique seafood shops back then, they're terrible, terrible. So I kind of, it was always a running joke in my family that we caught so much fish that I should just sell fish for a living. But we were never commercial fishermen. We were just recreational fishermen, like the weekend warriors. But we were pretty serious about it, But it kind of just all aligned, and I kind of wanted to try my selling fish, So that's kind of how this whole career started.
Okay.
I never really worked in like a commercial fishery or a commercial like fish wholesaler. But I think that kind of helped me out quite a bit because that's how I was able to kind of think outside the box and do things my way, or not get stuck in some kind of vicious cycle of, well, why do you do this? Oh, it's because we've been doing it that's how we've always done it. So I was able to kind of develop my own processes and own way of doing things, and it just seems to work out.
I think that's awesome. It I could imagine too, just kind of jumping around from one thing to the other, and then finding something you're really passionate about too. I worked in tech for a while, and it's like you could be passionate about tech, but it's not always something that's passionate. And then to sort of transition back to something you're like, what, this feels right, which is cool. And it shows through. I mean, I followed you on social media for a while, and like just I can see your passion come through the content, and you really care about it. So it's awesome to see.
It's just funny how many people we talk to who started out in some sort of finance or tech or something like that, office job, who's found themselves back into the world that they grew up in. It's hard to. Not that you want to escape it, but it's hard to escape that. You have it in your blood a little bit, I think.
Oh, definitely. I think, especially, us who have kind of like a passion for that outdoor life, right? Whether it's on the water or in the woods, up on the hill, wherever. But I have to say, I mean, I learned quite a bit in tech. I was in it for a minute, and I did global supply chain, and who knew that came in handy, and I apply everything I knew and everything we did in tech to the way we sell and manage supply chain for fish as a commodity. So I mean, it all worked out early. I'm managing and selling fish the same way I was managing and selling IC chips.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, very similar principles, just different products. I'm sure.
Yeah.
So where did the transition come from, just sort of selling fish to pursuing sort of the dry age fish aspect of it?
The term dry age fish, it's terrible. It sucks. We have so many conversations about this all the time. People, when they first, like, my idea of what dry age fish is different than, I would say, 99.5 or more % of the people out there. When they hear dry age fish, everyone kind of they kind of develop their own idea of what it may be, right? And the first word they really gravitate towards is the word dry, right?
Yeah.
So first off, the fish that we're producing is anything but dry, right? The word dry is there only because it's fish that we produce and maintain in a dry environment. just like beef, right? And who wants aged fish? Everyone has been programmed to only want fish as fresh as possible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, whether you're a fisherman or just someone that loves seafood and always order fish at a restaurant. I mean, they're programmed. They're programmed to walk in and ask the server, "Hey, what's fresh today? What came in? What's the daily catch? What came in this morning?" But but let's be real. I mean, if you're at a restaurant anywhere in a first world, second world country, I guarantee you that fish did not come out of the water that morning. I mean, even if you're next to the beach and the pier, I remember this very very clearly when I was little in New York. We used to go down to Sheepshead Bay. You guys know Sheepshead Bay?
Mm-mm.
Over
No.
No, I've never been there. No.
It's a popular quote unquote fishing port out of New York, Rochester, and or I should say Brooklyn, and they would sell fish off the boats as if it's the daily caught, right? And then you would look, and I knew what they caught, right? So they'll be they're selling fish off the boats, right? But then there'll be like 3 or 4 local species, and another 75% of the fish you can tell came through the airport. Like they're not local fish. There's salmon, there's tilapia, there's like everything else on the boat, right? But just people have that idea that, hey, I'm buying it off of a boat that's sitting at a dock, and it must be fresh. They just caught it last night.
I see that in farmers markets a lot too.
Yeah.
You get the guy selling stuff out of season, and he's got oranges there. And you're like, where'd you pick those in Canada? But yeah, it's like there's some farmers selling their stuff that's fresh, and there's someone doing the same kind of skeezy stuff like that.
Oh yeah, what's the
pitching the boxes over the side?
What's the average cold chain time for apples? Is it like a month or 45 days or something like that? Something crazy.
It's crazy.
I think too, like strawberries and some of the berries and like the fruits that they like flash freeze. And there's in Florida, there's just warehouses of stored frozen fruits and vegetables that are just waiting to get shipped out. We always had, my wife and I had a farm when we lived down in the Florida Keys, and it was like a big thing because we were one of the only like farms in the Florida Keys, and it was a hydroponic base, and we grew a lot of vegetables and stuff like that, and we'd go sit up at markets, and it would be like the guy across the street was like, or across the row was like Adam described, there's like, he's got everything, and people are just like filing through, and we're like, look, like, it's not even coming from like mainland Florida. Like you can see the boxes under the table. He's got like stuff from Mexico. He's got stuff from the West Coast. He's got stuff from all over. Like, why are you stopping at his booth and not ours? Like our stuff is grown here. It's just like we picked it this morning, and it's just like, yeah.
He's got his kid peeling stickers off in the back.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
So, now that we've set the bar for the term dry age, and I'll tell you too, like the first time I ever heard the term dry age thrown out there, I think like dry aged meat, of course, but immediately what comes to my mind is like dehydrated, to a point where it's like crispy, crackly, like, like salmon skin or something like that, which, I know not at all. That's the very far end of the spectrum of it, but I know that that's not at all what it is. And sort of, I think you're 100% with when people think about it, they're like, wait, why would we age fish?
Yeah.
So
So
why would we age fish?
my methods and my practices and my principle, like how I treat fish, you know, came from years, like 25 plus years of me catching fish off of our boat, catching a bunch of it, and essentially having to deal with it, right?
Hmm.
And and for the most part, most people deal with it by either slapping it out, filleting it, whatever, just get it in the freezer. But we all know fish in the freezer is a big black hole. Like stocking the freezer with fish never worked out well for anybody at home. You know,
Hmm.
um, game is maybe a little bit different story, but I think it's similar too, where you know it's never the same. The quality is so degraded. Um, so everything we did kind of developed from the idea of, hey, how do we maintain or prolong the shelf life of fish once we've harvested it, right? And I think that goes to a lot of your viewers here who are fishermen who catches their own fish, and you know, what are all those little things that we can do from the moment we grab that fish and take it out of the water and we decide that we want to bring that home and throw it in the cooler, right? So what are some of the little things that we can do to ensure that this fish can uphold and like maintain its qualities and also get better, actually. We know that you know fish right out of the water or whitetail that's shot this morning, like they don't taste any good that same day. Like we wouldn't want to eat any of that, right? So
Hmm.
we always want to give it some time, let death do its thing, let it play out, and then while we have that time, we kind of, for fish at least, we do little things like remove the blood, remove the slime, remove the organs that make the fish spoil sooner. Because we're after the flesh of the fish, right? We're really after the meat, and there's so many little things that we can do to improve the quality of it if we just took care of it in different ways.
So I guess as you've sort of like put together this process over time, what thinking through the approach of like someone at home doing it, what are some of the methods that you've sort of grew up with and picked up that you've translated over into your business, and how does that sort of create the product that you sell?
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of little things, simple things that like even I tell my dad to do. You know, I think I think when someone catches a fish, like death is super important, right? So that clean kill is probably going to be the best thing that you can do for it,
Hmm.
for yourself, as with this harvest, and for the fish as well. So what we like to do is brain spike the fish, bleed the fish, let that core temperature kind of drop down, depending on what kind of fish it is. If it's a hot moving fish like a pelagic, you definitely want to chill that core body down. Versus like a like a little grouper or a snapper, their body temp might be closer to what water temp is. You're not running like way hotter than what water temp is, but I think cooling it down and getting it down to that you know less than 40-degree core temperature is pretty critical. You know, um, so brain spiking, um, bleeding the fish. We want to remove as much of that blood as possible. Um,
Are you cutting the gills to get the blood out? Like how are you bleeding the
yeah,
fish?
so I think the most effective way is the gills, because that is the first major artery where the heart pumps to. So the heart will pump directly to the gills to oxygenate the fish. Um, so when you clip those gills while the fish is still alive, every pump of blood coming from the heart is going to exit from the gills. For tuna, there's also like a major vein on the lateral lines that bleed very well as well. But for the most part, fish that people normally catch, all like gills are a great spot. You can catch a fish, braid spike it, clip the gills, put it in a bucket of water for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and let that kind of let death happen. It'll bleed out, and then from there, just try to get it on ice, get it on nice ice. Even don't throw it in your cooler on some gas station knobby ice that it's just gonna end up bruising one side of the fish. You know, crushed ice is always the best. Or we used to use big blocks of ice. So we used to freeze, make our own ice at home with milk jugs.
Yeah,
Right?
I was gonna say I like the milk jug method myself.
So if you have big blocks of ice, then you can't bruise the fish. You can lay them around it and things like that. It helps, right? Um, Another big one I feel that people don't do too often is kind of gutting the fish first before they fillet the fish. And I think that's what I see a lot of outdoorsmen do, that really deteriorate their fillet. Like we see it every time, right? These guys, they'll fillet on the boat or fillet back at the dock, and they'll just slab these fish out with their guts on, and they'll puncture the stomach. There's bile everywhere. There's stomach acid everywhere. Hose it down with the deck hose, and then just throw it in a bag and bring it home. And man, that's gnarly. That's gnarly, right? So I think the best thing someone can do really is to take the time to gut the fish, bleed the fish, and then even that whole form, just let it rest. Rest 24 hours, 36 hours, um, you know, and then fillet it. And I get it. It's easier to do it at the dock, so you have throw the carcass over and this and that. But it's possible to do this if you're catching smaller fish, things like that. That you're catching just enough for the dinner table. It's all manageable.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
And you can make a stock out of the carcass too,
Oh yeah,
rather than throwing it in there.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
There's so much good meat on those collars, the stock, and um, i- if you everyone wants to catch their limit. If you just catch and harvest enough for what you will want to use, and be very precious about those few fish that you have, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes a long way.
We talk about that a lot, sort of like, even I think from the game aspect, we focus on it just of like kind of this mindset of culinary conservation. And I think like this falls clearly into that lane as well of like, you don't need to chase limits. You don't need to chase the biggest, or, if you're out hunting whitetail, like everybody loves a deer with, big antlers. There's some back there. Not that
Yeah.
big. Not that big, but, everybody likes that. But if you're looking for something for the dinner table of like, all right, maybe I should target invasive species. Maybe I don't need to pursue my limit. Maybe I just need to shoot a few here and then go out and, when I need a couple more, I shoot a couple more, whatever, dove, squirrels, rabbits, insert the species there, or just catch a couple, just like you said. And I think
Yeah.
I think it's great to just kind of think about it that way. And we're trying to sort of encourage folks to embody what you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, use more of the animal
Yeah.
rather
Definitely.
than catch more
Yeah.
or shoot more animals.
Yeah, I mean, I've come a long way. Even my dad, who is OG, like old, like kill everything, or no, they've come a long way from that. Now he literally has his own slot sizes for fish because he knows those taste the best, right? Anything bigger, he doesn't even want to deal with it, so he just lets it go. Whatever he wants. He wants 5 for the week, and he wants those blackfish right there at 16 and a half inches, and that's what he targets, and he'll take good care of them, He'll keep them vertical in a bucket, and he's got a fridge in a garage, and he'll let it rest for 3 or 4 days, let some of that blood and slime kind of like drain out, and it's tasty stuff, man. It's really good.
So on that, could you describe, like you mentioned, let it rest for a couple days, or like could you describe what that looks like in a person's fridge, or like you mentioned standing up in a bucket, or would you lay it on a tray in a fridge? Like how would you let it rest?
Like at home, it's pretty limited with how you could do it. Ideally, of course, we like to get the fish vertical, because whenever you rest it on one side, um, there's pressure on that one side for one, and it doesn't allow for blood to drain out. Kind of like if you were to hang a deer and not hang a deer and lay it on its side, you're gonna have one side of that deer essentially go bad, right? So
Mhm.
that's why you really want to just get it vertical and get it where you kind of have static air around it, um, just for that draining process. Right? And I get it. Not everyone really has the fridge space or whatever, to do it. But um, my dad, he literally just has a Home Depot bucket. He'll lay them in and he'll prop them up and just sit them in. They're just all facing down. He's got some towels on the bottom, kind of, so they're all sitting on their nose, and that's where all the impurities of the fish kind of comes out, excess blood, slime, whatever it is, and he just keeps it in there, and when you do that and you fillet fish out, man, that fillet is ivory white. It's clean. It doesn't smell. Um, the lack of blood keeps it from spoiling. So now you have a product that doesn't spoil without having to freeze it. And that's a big win.
I was just thinking, sort of, if you did sort of a flavor comparison between sort of just as you described the most, I don't know, if we want to go the far end of the spectrum, to like the most atrociously filleted fish to like something that's cared for, that's allowed to rest and then filleted, like in your opinion, what's sort of the night and day? What would be the motivating factor if I was like, I don't know about this, like what would make me want to do it?
So what's like the worst fish market smell you've ever experienced?
Oh man. I walked into the Safeway in my neighborhood here the other day, and I could smell the fish market from the front door, and I was like, no.
So that's exactly what it would taste like, man. Right there. If it smells like that, it's gonna taste like that. Um, like if you ever get a chance to make it out to LA, if you stop by our fish market, the first thing you're gonna notice is that our fish market doesn't smell like fish. So what contributes to that fishy smell is a lot of is the blood, the slime, the moisture that's surrounding fish, and the nature of fish is for it to be wet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of that contributes to fishiness, and fishiness when it's fresh, it's got a certain we I think we all understand what that fresh fish smells like, but
Yeah.
it goes downhill from there, right? If you were to smother it, keep it in a bag, or not let it, kind of just you've gone fish at a market, open the bag, and the first thing you get is that hit in your nose where, yeah, that's gonna
Woof.
wake you up, right? Like that fishiness is what it gets you, right? But if you do these little things with keeping fish in a dry environment, you remove a lot of that excess moisture, and then now you're tasting fish for what it should really taste like, and you get the right textures as well. Um, so so the comparison really will be that very very clean and brisk and flavorful flesh, especially if it's a whitefish, compared with that gnarly fish market smell that you kind of want to walk away from. So
That's a very good like.
Yeah, I think I can picture that smell.
I can picture it in my head. So I'll talk about like a guilty travesty that I had. So back when I was in San Diego, we went out on a bachelor's party trip, whatever you call it, to go fishing, and we were fishing out of San Diego for tuna. And I mentioned this, I think, on our last episode, Adam. Maybe it was 2 ago. We were talking about the way they were handling the tuna and just kind of like filleting them on the boat. Guys smoking a cigarette, filleting it, throwing like into a plastic bag that was going to go into the reefer on the boat. And me being the creative culinary mind that I am was like, hey man, can you save one of those tuna heads for me, because I want to do something with it. And start with, like, you tell a deckhand on a boat you want to save a tuna head, and you get some sideways glances, which I did. But then it went into the bag with all the other fillets, and they had then bled them out and everything else, and it was just a mess. Fast forward like a few weeks later, not obviously as progressive in my culinary career as I am now, I decide it's time to make a roasted tuna like ramen. And my plan is I'm going to roast this tuna head in the oven in I think Marjorie, my wife at the time, and I had like a one or two bedroom place in San Diego, super small. And so I thaw this fish head out and I roast it. And I think she was at work that day. She came home and she was not happy, as you could imagine. Yeah, probably not. We had to air out the whole house. I mean, the recipe itself, the process was great. I think that would be the big changing factor in the way in which I sort of handled the head over time. The recipe is still up on our website on Harvesting Nature there if you want to do that. A few tweaks to it. Obviously, don't treat the fish head as I did, and it just end up with everything else sort of in this mass. Yeah, I'm guilty. I'm as guilty as everyone else, I think.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, like, I've been through a similar situation with a deckhand where I asked for whole fish. Like, don't fillet them, I just want the fish whole. And that was a crazy thing to ask for, which seemed crazy to me that no one had ever asked this guy for non-filleted fish before. But these guys are the experts in the field, in quotes. They're really good at catching fish, but not at preparing them or knowing how to prepare them. And you just kind of like, I found generally deckhands are like a brisk sort. They get things done quick and they don't have much time for nonsense. And you just kind of assume they know what they're doing, but I don't think many of them do. Like, I think the cooking side of things, just like we've run into, Justin, and like hunting guides don't always know what to do. Like, they know how to hunt very well, way better than I do, but they don't actually know how to deal with the ingredients once it goes from animal to meat. It's just an interesting thing that these people you think might be experts might not actually be giving you the right advice.
Yeah, I think you're very right. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's so many avid hunters and guides and and I should say like heroes or celebrities in the field that kind of really try to promote, right, and try to push for better treatment of your game to ensure that you have a better table fare, really, because there's and at the end of the day, I think a lot of us hunt and fish because we want to provide that table fare, to our families, right? And so why wouldn't we want to try to make it better?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. And, we see it a lot sort of like in the debate, and I'm sure you see it too, is people ease into the thought of, the process of being more tedious and caring in fish. And I think with game too, it's like, well, why do you take all that meat and submerge it in ice water and let it set for 3 or 4 days and then drain it off and fill it back up again and drain it? And people are, I've heard the travesties like, if I soak it in water and Dr. Pepper and lemon juice, the gaminess comes out. And it's just like, why do you do it that way? And it's like, well, my great uncle taught me to do it that way, and so that's the way I'm going to do it forever. And it's like, But think about it. Do you go buy like a prime cut of beef at the grocery store and throw it in the cooler and let it soak in Dr. Pepper and lemon juice? No. So like, why do it with wild game? But people, and I think to go back to like what Adam said is like even just us going to, I think it was Goose Camp you're talking about, us going to Goose Camp and being there with the guides and being like, hey, like, try this. Instead of bringing your clients back and telling them, take these goose breasts and soak them in water till the blood comes out of them, like take them and set them aside and just let the goose rest overnight and then cut it and then keep it dry and like, take all the precautions you would with like a really nice cut of meat, because it is. And then we were like, all right, we're going to cook it up in the morning. And they're like, wait, like why would you do that? It's not going to be like goose poppers or goose bites or whatever. And we're like, no, those are great, but like try this. And they're just like, their mind, you just see like, but it's great because that's my favorite reaction to see with people is like that connection of, oh my gosh, I have the ability to get this myself. And then sort of, this is my food that I curated or I, acquired or harvested, caught, shot, whatever you want to say. And then now I get to eat it in this like really special moment. And that's my favorite. So
I can only imagine doing it like with the properly aged and bled and with all the proper steps with the fish. The difference between what people are used to and eating a fish that you might be selling would be such a different experience for them.
Oh yeah.
Be mind blowing.
Night and day. And I think the opportunity is there for anyone that catches fish. Because I guarantee you, whatever you catch yourself is fresher than anything you can buy with money. 100%. You have control over that narrative from the moment you harvest that fish, right? I mean, we get fish really fast from around the world. I have king salmon coming from the southern hemisphere, and that gets to from the moment it leaves the water to my shop in less than 36 hours.
Wow, that's really good.
Fast.
Yeah.
It's fast. So a big part of our program is to source fish fast, because if you have fish that is already, if it's already decomposing, I can't use it. I can't age it. I can't make it go uphill. It's already going downhill. I need to start with the best possible piece of fish, and then we can maintain and make it better from there. Yeah.
What's sort of the feedback that you get from people after they try, say they try some of your fish for the first time versus, they've been going to, I don't know, Costco or wherever and buying fish? What's the general consensus?
I think for consumers, for regular, cooks at home, fish is probably one of the most intimidating proteins to cook at home. Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, even it's even intimidating for a lot of chefs, and it's intimidating because the chances of it like gassing out the apartment with fish smell is very high.
Yes,
and they spend a lot of money on it. Fish as a protein is very expensive. Quality ones at least, right? But even if you were to spend good money for it, it doesn't guarantee you that you cooking at home you'll succeed, right? And I think what they really want to do is to kind of cook fish for their family and their family enjoying it, right? I think that's the biggest part, right? So going back to what are some of the reactions? I think it's always skeptical at first, that because they've had everyone's programmed to be scared or be they don't want to fuck it up. They don't want to fail in this fish dish, right? Mm-hmm. But when they get our fish and it lacks the moisture, it lacks the blood, and it lacks every component of it that will make it fishy or make it overcook easily or whatever, they'll succeed, and they'll realize, man, it's so easy to work with this quality of fish. I can do it again because you know what, my family loved it, right? So it's kind of like it's a trust process, right? They got to try it once, and then if they succeed, they'll come back and explore other species. You know, our gateway, we call it the gateway drug to dry aged fish, is salmon, right? Everyone has kind of like their everyone's eaten salmon before, so they have a bar or a level. They know what is good salmon, right? And most of the time when they have our salmon, it smokes that line away, right? So then they'll be like, oh, hey, let's rethink this, and then from there they start asking questions and not be so intimidated and put up, like a defense. They're not in defense mode when they're buying fish. Like selling fish is almost like selling a used car a lot of times, right? The salesman, they always feel like the butcher is trying to like pawn off whatever they can't sell, or there's some kind of reason why he's pushing me on. No, it's not really that. So yeah.
So in terms of, you mentioned different species and starting with salmon, does this aging process work well with like all species? Like if I were to catch a bucket full of perch in the back lake, whatever, and bring them home and follow everything you said tonight,
Mm-hmm.
would that be a beneficial process even for fish like panfish
Oh
like
yeah,
that
100%.
or lake fish?
100%. Remember, it's
Yeah.
not about the aging; it's about the conditioning. So how you treat that
Mm-hmm.
fish as it leaves the water, it's going to make it a better um, ingredient, essentially, right?
Yeah.
And I actually do a lot of workshops across the country with different restaurants, and they want to learn how to age fish, and they usually reach out to me thinking that they want to learn how to age fish from me, but my what I teach them is, hey, let's take your normal source of fish. Let's get to a shelf life of day 4 first, right? How do we make really fishy fish like shelf stable first, and then we can talk about aging.
Mm.
Don't even think about it until you have the processing, the handling down, everything, all these first
Yeah,
steps. And
because for some people around the country, they don't have the supply chain to be able to get fish within 36 hours. If they got fish that is 6 or 7 days old, that's been in cold chain. For industry standard, that's a really fresh piece of fish, but it won't age. It's already deteriorating in that box, right?
Mhm.
So really, like recreational anglers are in a really good position.
100%.
That's
They're
good.
in a super position. They just gotta have that patience to be able to like take care of it and be really strict with themselves and be like, hey, I want this fish laying on this pillow of ice, and I'm gonna baby it all the way home, and I'm gonna save it for dinner with Grandpa 5 days from now. And I guarantee you, if they can look at it that way, it'll be a really good piece of fish.
Nice.
So what kind of time frames are we looking at in terms of aging fish? Like, are there minimums and maximums that you would recommend?
So we don't think in days anymore. That's kind of like deceiving because it's all relative. For example, if you're talking about like a 600-pound tuna, 21 days on that animal is like 3 days with a small perch.
Okay.
Scales, right? It's all relative. I think the best way to think about it is how much moisture, how much of that water in form of blood or slime have we lost. So if a fish started at 10 pounds, I think a good number would be losing 10 to 15% of whatever impurities it may have.
Got it. So almost treating it like cured sausage,
Yeah.
like salami or something like that. Like you're looking at the general like weight loss.
Yeah. I mean, we're not looking at so much. I mean, for us as professionals, we actually track and monitor water activity when it compares to like pastrami or prosciutto and things like that. But for regular people, I think you just think of it as, hey, did we lose 10% of weight? It's just like hanging a deer. You're gonna lose 10 to 50% of blood over however many days you hang it. 4, 5, 7, whatever it may be. So.
And do you lose any of the fish or the flesh like in the process as well? Is there like a discard percentage?
When we do it, we have very little discard. Everything is usable. It's not like beef where you trim. With tuna, yes, there's a little bit of a pellicle that we create, but the more you have to throw away because it's no good, it means that you didn't start with good enough fish, and
that's a good.
And then that part rotted on you, and that's all it is.
Ah, okay, yeah, that makes. And even too, like when we talk about like hanging and butchering deer, we try to teach sort of like the recycling of the pellicle to like put it in your ground meat or something like that, and to try to like reduce the loss. No. Yeah.
But for most people, they're trimming off because it's bad already, or it's grayed out or blacked out or whatever it may be, right? So then you didn't start with a good enough piece of fish, or something was compromised.
Yeah, and I could see even that too. Thinking through it, just doing it myself, I'm like, man, that could be a little intimidating if I like open the fridge and the fish is now discolored on the outside or something like that. But you're saying stick with it, try it again. It may not even be you; it may just be the fish itself.
Yeah. I can almost guarantee you, if you caught your own fish and you didn't leave it out in the sun, if you caught your own fish, you gutted it, you can keep it in your fridge in a dry for 10 days. Easy.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Easy. I can almost guarantee it. Like if it doesn't break temperature, you won't. That's fresher than any supermarket fish.
I've done it with trout, and I've done it with some saltwater fish too, because I used to spearfish a lot, like when I was down in the Keys, and would just like, let's try it, and it was just sort of me experimenting. But I did after I was like, all right, I'm going to put it in here for 3 days, 4 days, and then something would happen, and I'd be like, all right, now we're on day 7, so let's take it out and fillet it and cook it, and it's just like it's different, and it was great.
The key is to keep it dry. Really, people are like, oh, is it going to dry out? It's not going to dry out. If the fish has fat on it, it's never going to dry out. It actually keeps it from drying out when you cook it. Actually, and it's a conversation for another topic, but it never really dries out the fish.
Would you recommend patting down the inside with paper towel or anything after gutting it to increase dryness? So gut it, pat it down.
I think the best thing you can do is gut it, clean it with fresh potable water. I think fresh potable water is very important. Like, don't use lake water, don't use seawater. Use your faucet water, cold faucet water, because it's got traces of chlorine in it that helps disinfect. If there are traces of listeria or traces of, like whatever, that's much cleaner water to wash with. Just think of it like this: like, what water do you want to use to clean off a wound in your hand?
Lake water, 100%.
Yeah, 100%, right?
Yeah, muddy lake water.
No, I get you. No, the faucet, that makes sense.
And then from there on, just keep it dry. I'm not asking you to like wash. Never wash off a fillet, obviously, because that's open. Like that's open meat. That's flesh. But fish in a whole form, it's waterproof. Its stomach cavity is waterproof. So clean it. Yeah.
Clean it, dry it, eat it.
What about soaking it? You mentioned that earlier, kind of like a bleeding out method. At what point do you not want to like submerge fish into water?
Well, when I was when I say put it in a bucket of water, bleed it out, that's like 2 minutes.
Sure. Okay.
1 minute. Yeah, that's just so you don't make a mess on your boat.
So I don't soak it in Dr. Pepper and lemon juice in my back patio in a cooler of ice.
No, yeah, you do that. Make sure you get some blood in that Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
And then you leave it in the sun, and then you boil it down. Dr. Pepper pudding or something. I don't know.
Ooh. Be careful. We may see that on menus of some restaurants after this. So really just a couple minutes, get the blood out, and then really no more soaking. The goal is to keep it sort of dry. Okay, cool.
Yeah, keep it dry, but cleaning it with water is necessary. So, just make sure you're cleaning it and making your cleaning surface is clean, obviously. So,
I think that's another big one too. I see a lot of folks dirty cutting boards, blocks of wood that they pull out of the garage. That's the fish cleaning block. My grandfather,
gutting stuff.
Yeah, say my grandfather, we would take coming home, catch like a load of bass from whatever pond we were fishing at, and our like front porch. There was one part of the front porch he always used because it was like the perfect height, and he would just put down newspaper and just fillet fish right there, like going crazy. And now I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking about filleting fish, and I was like, man, I wish my grandfather was around. We could have some great conversations about about it. Yeah, so clean cutting boards, clean knives, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Any other tips you would offer up you could think of?
No, I think I mean those are the things I would that's kind of like things that I tell you my dad. He's in his 70s. He's not going to be able to be so comprehensive in doing everything that we do, right? And these are all those little things that's manageable for anyone that's catching fish on the weekend and ensuring that their catch is better for the kitchen.
Nice. And what's I'm going to start to sort of wrap up as we run down on time here. One last question. Any sort of new techniques or innovative things you're kind of experimenting with in this space?
I mean, we're always learning. We're always trying different things. For us, we are pushing the envelope with how much fish we can produce. That's kind of the bleeding edge part of it for us.
Mm-hmm.
No one is dry aging, conditioning fish 5,000 pounds at a time in 1 week, and when we do that. And our capacity is going from 5,000 pounds to 45,000 pounds in our new facility. So I think a lot of that is that's the bleeding edge stuff that we're talking about. How do we, it's easy to do it with one fish. How do we do it with thousands of fish?
Yeah. Wow. And that's sort of quantity too. Influences. It's not just like, hey, we're producing fish. You're influencing the way people are consuming fish, which I think is remarkable. Mm-hmm. Which is that's the awesome part.
So the kind of like long-term feedback that we get from a lot of our chefs and restaurants that use our fish is, hey, we've been using your fish for X amount of time. What we've noticed is that we have way less waste. Like fish, even for a restaurant, that's why chefs order fish the night before for next day service, and tell everyone it just came today and it's fresh, because they don't want to sit on it, because after 2 days, even regular fish and regular traditional fish market style distribution goes bad very, very fast, right? And that just, in the long run, that's just less waste all around.
No, I think it's great too, and I think about it from like a business perspective as well for you. The fact that you're able, say a regular fish market could hold on to something for a week or a few days, but because you're entering it into this process that you guys go through, you're actually able to keep the stock and the inventory longer, which gives you more time to sort of find homes for it, which is
100%.
Yeah. Which I
believe it or not, if you ask any like fish market or fish wholesaler, they have a number that they write off every year or whatever it may be, to waste. Fish that they couldn't sell, that they had to write off. Right. We actually never have any waste, zero waste.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Well, unfortunately, I think we're getting in on the tail of time here. What's a good way for people to connect with you if they have questions? And when and where is a good time to come visit your shop to get some fish, or just come visit?
Come anytime. Come anytime in Los Angeles. Look up Joint Seafood. Our market's right there in Sherman Oaks. You can walk in. There, you'll be greeted by a fish butcher, and then there's a counter. So a traditional retail fish market.
Nice.
Right here in Sherman Oaks. You can always reach out on Instagram. Joint Seafood, at Joint Seafood, or me directly. It'll be at Dry Age Fish Guy. So simple, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we kind of do our last thing to close out, sort of last thoughts, ideas, anything you want to leave the audience with. Since you're the guest, I'll kind of turn it over to you, and then we'll make our round and close it out.
One of our models that we like to live by is fresh is boring. So, I know what fresh fish is like. I've caught so much fish in my life. I've gotten it to the table fast. I've eaten it on the boat. I know what fresh is like, and to me, with fish, at least when it's fresh, there's a limit as to how good it could really be, and it's boring, right? If we kind of like open our eyes and explore in the direction of, hey, how do we just take care of this fish better? It gets really, really interesting. It gets really, really good. So
love it. Adam, last thoughts?
Well, just thanks for coming on and sharing all this with us. And it's an exciting conversation. Anything that makes like wild food taste better and more usable and creates less waste is beneficial for everyone, especially with the state the oceans are in. Like reducing our limits and just having really high quality stuff that with less waste and using more of it is really important. I think that's very cool what you guys are doing. And thinking back to the beginning of the conversation where you said the dry age is a terrible way to put it because it just creates a wrong image. We're going to have to maybe give it up to our listeners to come up with a new name for dry aging fish. Maybe enzymatic activated fish, something that sounds fancy and expensive.
I've heard this one recently that I kind of liked. Fish at its peak performance time. Peak performance.
Yeah. I could get behind that. Yeah. So, no, thanks again, man, for coming on. It's been a great conversation. I too, like Adam, very much share that same sentiment. And, I think to, like, everyone out there sort of listening, like, this is one of those things we talk about sort of wild food overall is you've got this precious product. Like, you don't want to mess it up, to say, but I think being willing to sort of push the limits and try new things with game, with fish, with anything you get your hands on. I'm really sold on this for the flavor, for the usability, for the shelf life, for the reduction of waste. Like those to me those are things that I value, like to my core as a person. And I think just thinking through the whole process in that way makes it more appealing to me. It makes me want to focus more on it. It's like, I always come back to this, like, we've been doing this show for 3 years now. And I'm like, every time I have someone on, they change my perspective. They give me like literally food for thought. But I come away and now that I know it, I can't like unlearn the things we talk about. So those interactions sort of push me to push my own limits and my own comfortability as a chef and sort of like, hey, what can I do different? What can I do better? And how can I use wild game? And hopefully that transfers over to those listening and those reading articles that I write and everything that like motivates them to like, if that guy can do it, I can do it. So I think your listeners and your audiences are the perfect
they're the ones that have accessibility to catching their own fish and catching their own game, right?
Yeah.
And it's terrible when, as a fish market, a lot of people walking in, they ask me if it's wild and they've never fished their entire life. It's like, let's get back to, respecting nature, and then if we could source our own fish, harvest our own game, from there, that's half the battle, and the other half is getting into the dinner table.
Yeah.
And how do we maximize that?
Absolutely.
That opportunity.
Absolutely. No, thanks for that. That's perfect. Well, thanks everybody out there for listening. Appreciate any feedback you give us on this episode. As always, make sure you're following Liwei and his seafood shop, fish shop there on the West Coast. Stop by and visit if you can. And then whatever podcast platform you're listening to, punch that 5-star button. Leave us a review. Tell us we're doing right, or tell us we're doing wrong. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.